How has the TV everywhere model, this sounds funny, had an impact on your programming strategy? So there's the promotion side, you can catch audiences after the premiere, you can get them to help seed the word to like-minded people that are going to like the programming. Just in terms of your programming strategy though, beyond promotion, is there any kind of impact that you've seen?
Yeah, it's really about figuring out how to monetize it. So the one piece that's missing in all of this TV everywhere is measurement. So we can take and monetize the audiences on the big screen in the home. Nielsen has been very good with that. And when we get off that big screen and the first run of that episode or an as-aired version, trying to then monetize it on demand, or even when people PVR that content, or even further once it's available on a website, the ground becomes shakier. So for us, it's really about how do you extract the most value from a content asset, and that most value still is the TV. We don't, and so we're very cautious when we go across all of these screens not to jeopardize that first window, because not only do we generate advertising revenues, there's also subscription revenues that come along with it. But we work very closely with our BDU partners in making the other windows available. So whether it's via their broadband service, so making it still available to subscribers of the channel and the content, or via set-top box video on demand, which we've talked about is not quite elegant yet, but it is still a growing area for us. So it's really about making sure we maximize the money.
And I guess the other piece of that in terms of monetizing, though that's not our topic, on the kids side, when you're developing properties, transmedia, maybe give us an example of how you're tapping into the connected consumer, doing the best thing for the different screens and developing properties there. That's probably more where it has an impact.
For sure. So Chorus runs Nelvana, which is a kids studio. One of our newest properties is Mike the Knight, and I've got a great example here on, it's no longer just a show. We take that show, and it's not just a show for Canadian audiences as a Canadian broadcaster. We take this show and we look at each asset for what is its potential across various platforms. So the gamification of the program. So is there a digital game? Is there a physical game component? Is there merchandise that you can do as extensions of the show? All various ways to engage with that particular program and the characters within that program. So Mike the Knight is a great example. We just did season 1. It's now sold in 20 countries worldwide, in addition to running on Treehouse in Canada. It runs on CBeebies in the UK and Nick Jr. in the US, where it's the #1 and #2 program for kids. The website is upwards of 10 million page impressions each year, and each month. And the game has launched in the UK as a top 20 toy. So when we're looking at it, we're really saying, how else can we extend it? And there's also a magazine, and there's also DVDs that are still sold worldwide. So really looking at that whole spectrum of what you can do and how you can engage with those keen audiences.
Great. Speaking of transmedia, Chris, your company had, I think, 4 of the 5 CSA nominated shows. And globally, over the last few years, there's been tons of examples of networks doing really interesting social media game things to attract audiences. So what role does community engagement currently fulfill for your network? How much impact does it have? What's an example of a great success for you?
Sure, it's interesting. The transmedia stuff and community sometimes don't necessarily go hand in hand, and we've made some really great transmedia projects that do extend the story, or they're another piece of that story world, but they don't necessarily involve community. So actually, I'll go back to law school for an example. I mean, season 1, we commissioned a lot of really great work. We had a interactive motion comic. We did a couple of iPhone games. It was great content, but at the end of the day, the stuff that was really resonating with fans was stuff that they were doing off in the corners of the internet. They were creating animated GIFs. They were doing their own fan fiction. They were creating really cool stories, and that was the stuff that we kind of glove onto and said, for season 2, that's what we want to do. We want to do more of that fan interaction. Have some of that. That can happen elsewhere around the internet, but wouldn't it be great if we can add value as the broadcaster and as the producer as well on our networks as well? So our whole approach to season 2 was much more community driven and much more, hey, you guys are already doing this, and for those that don't know you are, here's a bigger megaphone for you to be able to share this great activities that people are already doing. So that's sort of an example of how we noticed the fans were already doing something. We shone a light on it, and it created something that was a huge community of Lost Girl super fans that some of them carried over to some of our other shows like Continuum, and we see the similar kind of activity around the genre shows. It's interesting. What we're trying to do with the approach is we still do big campaigns from a marketing standpoint for 4 weeks or for 6 weeks, but we're approaching some of these shows like 52-week fan ecosystems. So we're trying to make it so that, because those fans are talking about our shows, even when they go off the air, they run their 10-week, their 13 weeks, there's still fan engagement going on, and we don't want to drop those fans. We want to make sure that we're still engaging them in some way, and then I would argue that the lift the next time we're launching the next season is lighter because they're still with us throughout that time, still talking about our show, still engaging around it. So that's sort of approach that we've taken around some of our key properties is, really staying with those folks right through after. It's not just on to the next.
So letting them lead what the content for that community is going to be and what the parameters are.
For some of them, yes. I mean, they are very. I mean, it's pushing things out doesn't necessarily work. You can come up with the greatest strategy and plan, and they'll let you know right away whether this is something they like or they don't like, and you have to be able to listen. And that's what we've learned, that sometimes creating this great big playground or creating a quote unquote community isn't the way to do it. That they're going to do it on their terms, and you have to play ball that way and be very flexible and a little bit more nimble.
So you recently made a big announcement this week with engagement plans for Big Brother, which is probably the most extensive I've heard of yet in Canada, and with a game by Secret Location. Overall, what are you looking at in terms of results for this? What are your expectations?
Well, it's by far the biggest thing any of us have ever done. I mean, from the moment that it was announced at our upfront last May, it was trending right away. It comes with a built-in mega fan base, not just Canada, but globally. We have a lot of interest around the world around this show. Any sort of anything we talk about online, it immediately gets picked up around the world. I mean, for us, early on, it was very much key to have a show plan. It wasn't just a marketing plan, a digital plan, a content plan. This is a very integrated show. I mean, also because of the nature of it, it's always on. So the whole idea early on, I mean, the stakeholder meetings are massive. I mean, they're standing room only. We have the full team from Insight, the full team from Secret Location, every department you could imagine at Shaw is represented. But that's important because then we all know what's going on at any given time, and it really is a true hyper collaborative show plan. So, I mean, at the end of the day, sort of to riff off of what Maria said, I mean, are people watching on the 3 nights on the linear play on Slice? Absolutely, that's going to be what's crucial. But we have 24/7 live feeds, and we have highly interactive components where people can actually impact the game in some way at key moments. That's all going to be part of the metrics and what we look at. But at the end of the day, are people watching on Slice during those key plays? That's going to be a big measurement of success for us.
And how are you going to use this community when the show wraps? Like, how are you going to extend it?
Well, that's a great, I mean, we're having those conversations right now. I mean, what we've done, we've built this community literally from May, from the announcement. It's ramped up. We went on the casting call. It was even more. We've talked about the house build, and it just keeps growing and growing. That's the major question. We have the great plans throughout the run of the show, and then it is, what do you do after that? How do you move them potentially to other shows in the network? We have Big Brother on Global, a lot of those. There's a logical fit, but absolutely the plan is you never want to dump your community. You take the effort to build them and sustain it and nurture it. You want to make sure that you can organically, hopefully they'll move with you somewhere else.
I think we're going to now turn things over to the platform side a little bit with Dave and Janice. And starting with you, Dave, what are you seeing happening on YouTube? What's the impact, or what is the impact that's about to happen in terms of changing status quo? Maybe talk a little bit about this new category of producer that's coming up.
Yeah, I think, as Chris mentioned, I don't think you can force communities on people, but what we try to do is empower people by providing them the tools to then go out and create their own communities. And I think, the perfect storm for creators right now is, these efficiencies and cost in terms of production and distribution, matched with this massive audience of, over 800 million users a month that are coming to the platform, which then creates these kind of mass niches where creators can reach a mass audience in a very narrow niche in terms of content that they're creating. And when you talk about communities, great example is Michelle Phan, who most people probably are familiar with in the room, but she does a lot of beauty tutorials on YouTube, amassed an amazing audience, I think of about over 2.5 million subscribers. encroaching on, probably 1 billion views in the near future, I'm sure. But looked at that and said, there's an opportunity here. I'm trusted in this community environment. How can I further this? And she actually took it offline with a model akin to Birchbox, where people would subscribe to get her endorsed makeup products for $10 a month. And I think the public, the public number on it is within 24 hours, she had 36,000 subscribers. So that really speaks to, I think, both the community and the niche content appeal, but also what happens when you're able to connect with an audience on a personalized basis, and they deem you to be kind of an authentic voice within that niche.
On the flip side, can you give us some examples of new models you're seeing of a traditional media company or content producer working with YouTube in a complementary way, either using these influencers or however? What's some good examples of a big brand?
Yeah, I think the neat part about working with the folks on Canada on YouTube is this kind of shift towards thinking of the content creator as an exporter, as well as just someone who's going to reach a Canadian audience. So Maria talked about, the importance of owning IP on content creation and the implications of that, and we see that every day where, you sit down with an independent Canadian creator and they say, why are 20% of my views and audience coming from Saudi Arabia or Vietnam? And I can't do the cultural analysis behind that. I can explain how YouTube analytics works, but it's neat to see people who are putting their content out there and seeing a massive net new audience that they hadn't reached before. And as far as more traditional distribution partnerships go, I think the platform is complementary on a number of different levels. So there's a lot of ways that people are taking advantage of the platform, whether that's through this robust content identification system that we've put in place, which I think there was traditionally this challenge of, well, we want to have fans and we want to have engagement, but we don't want our content to be out there for free. And we hope that we've gone the distance in helping to solve that problem by allowing content creators, when they've uploaded content, to then tag that as their own content, and they own the IP, and they can decide, do I want to let this content stay up and live and breathe and I can sell ads into it and monetize my content, or do I want to take it down? And so at kind of the baseline lowest common denominator with traditional media companies, they're using that as a tool to either take it down or monetize, in most cases, the user-generated or fan-picked content, which then allows fans to do what they do and upload content and share it with their friends, but also not at the expense of someone who owns the IP to that content. And
who's doing it best? Have you seen any industry, whether it's music or which category has used it really well to some advantage to the brand?
Yeah, I think, the ones that make the most sense probably out of the gates and are thus the most experienced with it are, the music labels, the film studios, where, fans want to share that content. They want to share the Rihanna video, they want to share the movie trailer, and it's great for the movie if, the movie trailer is amassing a ton of views and generating a new audience, a groundswell of enthusiasm. But also they can then, start to monetize those eyeballs and monetize those views. So I think those are probably, the two that we've seen traditionally, and that's continuing to evolve into, more and more the longer tail creator space as well.